Greetings, my little GGs. Yeah. Tonight we're drinking, this was a bottle of wine I've given it as a present quite a lot of years ago. Well, I say quite a lot of years ago. Can't be that many years ago. It's taken 2019, but it's probably about 3 or 4 years old. This is a South Africa Merlot, 2019. There's significance to the line, which is why they bought me this one. But that's in a completely different life to me cooking. But it's been, I opened it last night. Very, very nice. So we might finish that tonight. We're going to have this with tonight's delicacy, which is grilled lettuce. Grilled lettuce? Lettuce? Grilled lettuce for salads? No, it's not. Well, it can be. And, by the way, there is a significance to that picture behind me. Actually, probably from there you can't quite see. It's a bit rude. There is a significance. We'll come to that in a second. This is quite a quick and simple dish. It's a grilled, in this case, little gem lettuces. Very popular in the UK. They're like a small romaine lettuce. You've not heard of them anywhere else. With Za'atar, pistachio and garlic yoghurt. So, keep looking at the naughty bits. Put the skillet on. We're going to, when I say grilled lettuce, we're actually going to do the lettuce on this. But before we do anything, we want to just lightly toast our pistachios. Now, obviously we've got them out of the shell. I've got about 50 grams there. And I've only just put that skillet on, so it's not even hot yet. But we're going to lightly grill them. Now, this contains Za'atar, and I've previously done a dish not that long ago. Well, actually, I suppose it was back about March, April. Chicken Za'atar. So I'm not going to tell you about Za'atar. I'm going to tell you about the lettuces and the significance of that. Now, one of the first reasons, see these two things here? Lettuce, right? Don't look quite the same as our little gem, does it? Or even our romaine lettuce. And I said to you, a little gem is essentially a sort of compact version. Because this ring, I've got this at the front. I think when this packs up, I think I might get like an induction or I don't know. Anyway, I digress. So the little gem is a compact dwarf lettuce of the Lactuca sativa genus and species. All right. Now, lettuce has been around a very long time. It was originally farmed by the ancient Egyptians. That's an ancient Egyptian picture. Well, it's a copy of one. It obviously ain't the original. If it was, I wouldn't have it sellotaped in my cupboard. Because it'd be worth some money, wouldn't it? So it was first cultivated, and the lettuce there was very, well, I say very different. It was different to what we have. But they farmed them for not only their leaves, but their oil-rich seeds. And then it sort of, I said to you, this don't take very long, but of course you've got to do things like this. Actually, what I can do while I'm doing that, in here, I'm going to put about a teaspoon of cumin seeds. Okay, and we just want to lightly crush them. Okay, we're not trying to get the powder, we just want to lightly crush the seeds. That'll help release some of the flavours. Keep an eye on that. So yeah, so the ancient Egyptians grew them, and inevitably passed on to the Romans and the Greeks. Then passed into medieval times, and there's quite a lot of documentation, herbalists, the herbals rather, written by herbalists, and other medieval writings where they talk about lettuce and its variety of lettuce. But by the 18th century, what they were writing about was some of the varieties of lettuce that we now have today. Right, so that's that lightly crushed. So I'm just going to carry on toasting these. Okay, stop looking for the naughty bits, you ladies. Or you men. Stop looking at the naughty bit. I think they've just about had enough. Some of them probably gone a little bit too far. Whoops, don't get anything on there. So I'm just going to tip these back in the bowl, and we're just going to put that scoop over there out of the way for a moment. Okay, let me put them there. I'll put them on there. And what I've started doing, and I'm going to keep that, I've started peeling. Oh, missed a bit of peel there. Some garlic. You want about 2 cloves of garlic. Okay, so usually I've got a bit more than that. And in here I've got a bowl of, in this case, low-fat yoghurt. Okay, just normal natural yoghurt. It doesn't have to be low-fat. Just it does in our house. Right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put that crushed cumin that we just done. Let me just loosen that bit up that's in there into that yoghurt. Okie doke. And that's that finished with. Okay, and then with the garlic, we're just going to crush that garlic into that mixture as well. So like I say, this is a very simple little dish. Okay, that's that bit done. So just going to put that there for a minute. I don't need these bits of garlic. I do need a swig of that. So I told you that the Latin name for lettuce is Lactuca sativa. The lactuca comes from the Roman, from Latin, basically from lac, which means milk. And it's because when you cut the stems of lettuce, like some plants, it exudes latex and looks like white milk. So that's why they give it the name milk. But there's a connection to that. And you dirty-minded people probably already worked it out. Filth! Filthy minds! Just because I said about that rude picture of milk. So now I'm going to take a lemon. Now this is quite a small lemon. You only want the juice. Oh, there's some pips in there. I might use that. I think for that I wasn't going to bother. But I don't want them pips coming through. Well, now you want, he says there about the juice. Well, actually, I got this, I say he, this recipe I found, actually I think there might just be enough in there for that. We might give it a taste and see if I want to add any more. And then we're just going to give it a pinch of salt. Just want to mix all that together. Okay, I say he, I was looking on the Borough Kitchen, which is to do with the Borough Market, which I've still never visited yet. Hint, wife. And they've got loads and loads of recipes on there, all sort of based on some of the produce they sell there. I ain't got any teaspoons left. Oh, let me use this fancy spoon. Oh, let me see what it tastes like. Gonna hit that garlic. Oh, it's heat coming back garlic. Yeah, I might add a little bit more lemon juice. Okay, that will do that. Now, that's the sort of main base done. That can go there. Still got them toasted nuts. Got my Za'atar. I've got some oregano. This is fresh oregano, fresh from my little herb garden as well. And then I've got some little gems and some chickpeas. Now, I was saying to you, the name comes from the Latin. The word lettuce is Middle English, and that in turn sort of came from the French, the old French, lettuce or lettuce, which was derived from the Latin in the first place. Now, you may have heard of romaine lettuce. Romaine lettuce is one that's much more extended like that one, and that is, actually I'll wash them up in a minute, and that was because it was a variety, it was grown in the Roman papal gardens. And then you've got cos lettuce, which is also a derivative of the romaine lettuce, and that's because the seeds of that were originally grown on Kos, the Greek island of Kos, which was in Byzantine times like a major sort of lettuce farming area. So there you go, that's where the names of them come from. Right, I'm just going to have a little tidy up here. I still do need me knife for me lemons, for me lettuce. Okay, but essentially, once I've grilled me lettuce, we'll be ready to dish up. So, this is where I need a bowl for a minute. I did wash these lettuce. Lettuce are actually quite, if you don't, make sure you wash them, a source of E. coli, contamination, salmonella, various other things. But I've removed the outer leaves, I've given it all a wash. I've sort of tried to peel some things apart. Now I'm just going to take the very ends off, so I don't want that brown bit, and I'm going to toss them in there. That's a walk coming out that one. Because, I mean, I know normally we perhaps would get rid of a lot of that little bit on the end, but you don't have to eat that bit. Now, the Romans, where's wheat today? Oh, I don't like that leaf. I'm going to take that leaf off of there. Looks a bit manky, that leaf. Whereas the Romans, we sort of eat in a salad, initially, a lot of the time, they would cook the lettuce. The Romans, around about 50 AD, were cooking them and then serving them with a mixture of oil and vinegar dressing, which, ironically, is what we're going to do here. So first thing first, I'm just going to add a little sprinkling of salt. Okay. And then, here's my cloth. God, remember, don't touch that, don't touch that, why not? And then we want some olive oil, and we're just going to drizzle. It says about a tablespoon, but that's with 2 little gems, so I'm just going to add a little bit more than that. Okay. I'm also going to get, where's my other bottle? Oh, that's in there. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a glove on because I've got to do a Jimmy. So yeah, so the Romans were cooking it. However, they did then start eating some of the smaller leaves, the non-jalapeno leaves, sort of fresh, bit like we would do now. By the time of the Emperor Domitian, they actually started the tradition of having like lettuce or salad as like a first course. Okay, so I'm just trying to massage. I probably put a little bit too much oil in there, and now we're just going to put that back on with a medium-ish heat. Bit bloody thing with starlight. And what we do with our lettuce is we essentially just want to slice it in half. That one decided to fall apart. Okay, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do all 4 at once in here, so I might have to sort of go it in seconds. Okay, so we're just slicing these in half, and we're going to be cooking them in a minute. When that griddle gets hot, cut side down. So, even though I'm using my glove, I still managed to get oil on this hand. So that's perhaps how our tradition of having sort of a salad starter might have come about, to do with the Romans. Now, we've still got to talk about this guy here. Lettuce was a sacred plant in ancient Egypt. Although they grew it for like whatever reasons, seeds and everything. So what we're doing here is, like I said, we're going to cook these cut side down. Okay. I'm just thinking I might be able to. Two of these lettuces, actually there's a lot of water coming out of these where I rinsed them earlier. I did try and dry them. I did debate whether to put them in the salad spinner, but anyway I didn't. There we go. So we're going to cook those for a few minutes. Get rid of that mould. Oh, lost my chain of thought there. So we're going to cook them cut side down, 2 or 3 minutes. We want to get a little bit of char in on them. Okay. So I'm leaving that bowl, although I'm going to get rid of that watery mix that's in there, because what we want to do is, I've got a can of chickpeas here. If you're using raw chickpeas, you need to cook them and cool them and drain them. So these are cooked in the can, they've been rinsed and drained. They're going in there and they're going to be tossed with them. That's why I'm reusing that bowl. Hey? But we're sort of getting to him, aren't we? That's the god Min. Or in later references, Amun Min. That's because Amun got a bit jealous. I wonder why. So he absorbed him and they became Amun Min. Tell that in a minute. Now I've moved them around a little bit, because obviously the ones towards the middle were catching more. But just had a look at them, not quite ready for turning yet. So what I'm going to do with our the yoghurt mix is we just basically want to take that yoghurt mix and distribute that. Very runny, obviously that's the lemon juice for you. Okay, so we're just going to put some of that, well not some of that, we're just dividing that between 2 plates. Okay, that on. And then we're going to take that Za'atar and we want to spread that on there. Now, I was saying to you about him, the god Min. Okay, they are wild prickly lettuce, and they're normally always shown with him. And the other thing that he always has with him is the flail, which is a symbol of agriculture. Right, so there's them on there. Now, these toasted nuts, again, they we're just going to distribute them. Amongst that. Now, who's this Min then? Well, I'll tell you what, I was going to sort of save it for the end, but I'll actually, and I'm just going to move them over there. I'll put that on there because it was a bit of oil in there and I don't want it getting on the bottom of the plates, because we're going to eat them. But what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to turn this, but Min. Now, there's a myth, see, that hasn't really caught yet. Pardon me. So we now just turn it over to the other side. I might have to flip them again later, just to see if we can get a bit more char in on that. It doesn't really matter too much, okay? But there you go. So the myth, and this is a myth. Now, back in the day, there was a king. Oh, that's me salt I spilled. And he was going to go off to war. And he meant he had to take all his menfolk there. Well, he didn't want to take the women with him, so he left one man behind, a man named Min. And he said, right, I said, I need you to look after the women, guard the women with your life. So they're here when we come back. And off they went to war. And they come back after a few months. And everybody was like, what the fuck have you been up to, like, a woman? All the women were pregnant. Obviously pregnant. So the king said, get me that Min. So he said, what's all that about then? No idea, mate. You dirty little bastard. So as punishment, I'm going to chop off one of your arms. So anyway, next year, another war. The king says, right, I'm going off to war, but you've learned your lesson now. You're not totally harmless, but you learned your lesson. So you're staying behind because you're no good to me with one bloody arm. Yeah, in the battlefield. You're gonna. So the only other thing, by the way, we're going to need to get rid of is our oregano in a bit. I'm going to take them leaves off and we're going to chop them lightly in a minute. But anyway, I digress. So obviously they go off to war again. Come back after a few months. You dirty little bastard! You run again. All the women are pregnant again. So he calls him in and says, "What's going on here? You've been born before." And he, no idea, mate. So it's like, right, chop one of his fucking legs off. So chop one of his legs off. So, guess what? A year later, another war. Well, he's had lost an arm, he's lost a bloody leg. He must have learnt his lesson by now. You're staying behind because you're no good, one arm, one leg anyway. Look after women. And don't you dare. A few months later, they come back, they're all pregnant again. All the women, not the men. Right, I've had enough of this. What's happened this time? I've no idea, mate. Right. Obviously, I've been chopping the wrong bit off. Cut his penis off. So they whip off his clothes and go, oh my God. Massive. Massive. And they all refuse to cut it off. They said, we can't cut that off. Look at the size of that bugger. Perhaps turn that a bit low. And so, they didn't cut it off. And instead, they said, with a dick that big, you're going to be a god. And they made him a god. Now, that's a myth. And part of it stems from a lot of the paintings, particularly drawings and whatever in ancient Egypt, is because of the way they're drawn. Often they're drawn mummified, so their legs are sort of together, and possibly arms are as well. And also they do them on sort of sideways, and so it looks like he's only got one leg and one arm. He didn't, because there's like little statues of him and everything else where he's always got a right arm, which is his right arm up here holding his flail, and his left arm is down here holding his very large todger. Okay? And he's normally always associated with the lettuce. And this comes back to what I was saying about the white stuff that's exuded from the cut stems. Right, so while that's finishing off cooking, I'm just going to prepare my oregano, and I'll intend to finish off telling you about dirty bastard Min. Turn the heat off of these, and what we're now going to do is we're now just going to put that lettuce in with them chickpeas. Okay, we're going to be tossing them together in a minute. At the moment, I'm just going to move that out of the way. Okay, and we want to just chop this oregano. So, one of the reasons Min is always associated with these lettuce, this wild prickly lettuce, is because, and again, this is now I believe, been shown to be a myth. And it's like a lot of these things. It's like rhino horn. You know, in China, Chinese medicine and things like that, where one thing is rhino horn, it's basically like a replacement Viagra. It gives you like a hard on because it resembles the rhino horn. Complete wrong. But so whether it's the shape of that lettuce and the fact that when it is cut, the stem's cut, you get this milky latex out. They said, well, that's like semen, isn't it? And so it became this myth that lettuce had these aphrodisiac properties, and that festivals associated with Min they would present these lettuces and that, or lettuce. Is it lettuces? Lettuce. I think it's the same as lettuce, isn't it? They would present the plants together. Present the plants to the god as part of this thing about, well, that way he can carry on shagging like infinitesimally. You know, he'll never get tired. So this is why it became associated with the god Min. Now Min in this case is blue. Okay, almost always is shown in this pose, and like I said, in other things you can actually see his left hand is holding his bottle. Okay, he's always shown, apart from where they censor it, with a rather large phallus. Okay, and he's often portrayed as black skin. Now, in ancient Egyptian, black is not only associated with the night and in evil, but it's also associated with reproduction and fertility because it relates to the Nile. Now, the ancient Egyptians called the Nile Ur, which means black. And when it flooded, which it would do every year, it brought down all this black alluvial deposits, which made the sort of the land either side, when it, the water went down, very rich and fertile. And so they associated the blackness with this fertility. Hence, the fertility god, or one of the fertility gods, was often portrayed as black-skinned to reflect that. So we are just about there now, ready to serve up. So we've plated our yoghurty stuff and our things. We've got our chopped oregano, we've got our chickpeas and that in there. Now, just as another little thing, I was just saying about, there is another, whether it's a myth or not, I don't know, but connected to this idea of him fertilising the land with his semen, is that the pharaohs had to sort of ejaculate at the start of pre-flood season. But again, how true that is. But idea being that the pharaoh, who was considered a god, or going to be a god if he weren't already a god, his semen would essentially fertilise the Nile. But that's your typical Min picture. And women today, even today, going right back in ancient times, all the way through today, Egyptian women, when they come across a statue of Min, particularly if they're looking to get pregnant, what do you think they rub? Anyway, what we're now going to do is I'm just going to put this onto that yoghurt and we'll taste it. So the final touch is just to sprinkle on that freshly chopped oregano. And there we have our grilled lettuce with Za'atar, pistachio and garlic yoghurt. That one looks a little bit better, so I'm going to let my wife have that one. So let's have a little taste. So let's see if I can get a bit of everything. A bit of lettuce, a bit of yoghurt, a bit of chickpea, a bit of all the other dressing. Quite surprised how strong that garlic is. I know I put an extra bit in, but it's quite old, that garlic. But obviously the pistachios had a crunch. Not so much so, obviously, with the chickpeas, but a little bit. Add some texture. I wouldn't say you can also get an awful lot from the lettuce. Well, perhaps it's not me, but I don't know. Taste-wise, I don't. But very, very nice. They got the lemon, just enough, I think. There we go. Stop looking at that picture, dirty mustard. Your grilled lettuce.